Throughout, the history of LGBT rights, there's always these maybe silent folks in the back of the room who were silently providing critical support and help to our community. They may not get all the credit, all the glory about how far our community has come in terms of acceptance and inclusion in today's society, but it's those silent voices that helped really pave the way for what we're seeing in the country today.
We opened Trax as an after-hours club, 1980, but when we started, there was no general acceptance in the straight community of gay people. So the people would come to Trax because this was their home. This is where they could feel comfortable. This is where they belonged. And it really made it pretty easy as a businessman. You just basically open your doors, treat people with respect and dignity, and they kept coming back. Day after week after month after year.
I hear stories from people all the time, people, some very, very close to me, who grew up at Trax, who were rejected by their families, who actually slept at Trax, who were fed by Trax, and who became a part of a really, really incredible young community.
I was a little gay kid in rural Iowa growing up with not a lot of visible role models. And so I think that gay bars and the community that folks like Marty and Trax created was a huge part of our life.
We know what Trax is. It's more than just a building. It's more than just a nightclub.
Marty had this incredible vision of taking a concept and making it reality, especially with the Trax nightclub when those were not popular in those days. And he stood at the forefront in the gay community in providing them opportunities that unfortunately they didn't have before he stepped on the scene.
We just applied really good business concepts, and we were totally indifferent to the fact that it was gay or not.
Two straight Jewish Republicans starting a gay nightclub in Denver in 1980 is just a crazy story.
From the time he was very young, probably 8 or 9, he started living his life his way. Born and raised in Brooklyn, he was smarter than most anyone around him, and even at that age, he knew it. As a little kid, he'd take the subway in and he'd go to Yankees games instead of going to school. He graduated from high school when he was 16. The reason he wasn't 17 is because he hadn't been to school much and they were actually going to hold him back. The teacher said, "No, I am not having him in my class again." So actually he skipped a year because none of the teachers wanted him.
So Marty comes to DU. He barely had enough money in his pocket to cover his first semester. He joins a Jewish fraternity with a lot of kids who grew up very wealthy, and Marty really was able to take advantage of that situation, specifically at the poker table. He literally paid his tuition at the poker table.
After he graduated from DU, he started working for Douglas Aircraft in California.
You could say he was a pioneer in artificial intelligence because he helped design programs for the missiles and where they would land. Unbelievable.
He hated it. He used to say basically the whole job was justifying his existence, and you had to write reports about why you were doing things, and that just wasn't Marty at all. He never needed to justify anything to anybody.
But the one thing he got while he was in California was a broker's license, a real estate broker's license. And I'm not sure why he did it, but he did it.
And he said, well, forget about real estate in LA, forget about the aerospace industry. I'm gonna focus on Denver, and that's where it started.
Late 1960s, he's armed with a real estate broker's license, and he somehow hustles a client who asks him to find a factory so that he can manufacture Formica cabinets. And again, Marty, being street smart, in addition to being book smart, thinks, you know what?
Thought rather than look on multi-list, I'll try to find a bartender who knew an area that I thought would be well suited for this function. Walked into this place.
It's called the Foxhole. And he goes up to the bartender and says, I'm looking for real estate.
Some real estate? He said, right here.
He's like, I don't understand what you're saying. He's like, buy my bar. You can buy my bar. It's right here. Marty thinks to himself,
I'm not looking for a bar. I'm looking for a kitchen cabinet factory location.
but it's distressed real estate. It's downtown Denver. And he does some numbers in his head. He says,
Maybe 20,000 for the building, $10, 2,000-foot building. Maybe 4 lots, 10 grand. Old equipment, 2,000. $32,000. And he looked at me with a tear in his eye and he said, any way you could make that 32.5?
they shake on it. When Marty's hand and the gentleman's hand release, Marty's got the keys to a bar in his hands.
I turned to the 5 people in the bar and said, I guess the next round's on me. I think I just bought this place.
It was your basic railroad, blue-collar worker, plate lunch that have a beer sort of place. And so Marty sold it a few times, and invariably, after he sold it, it would go out of business because people would buy a bar for the wrong reasons. They'd drink all the profits. And as the landlord, it would end up back in his hands.
So a gentleman comes along, and he's a lawyer, and he wants to rent the bar. And Marty's thinking, why would a lawyer want to rent the Foxhole? This makes no sense. So Marty goes into the bar.
Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. All my nice wooden paneling had been painted black. All the lights had been removed and replaced with black lights. Hanging from the ceiling was lots of whips and chains.
And Marty realizes this lawyer is closeted gay, and this is going to be a gay bar.
The parking lot was absolutely full. And I thought to myself, why didn't I know about this?
Marty didn't think this was weird or inappropriate or not in line with the times. He said,
The next time it comes back into his hands, he's going to turn it into a gay bar and clean it up and do it right.
and sure enough, a year or so later, he starts missing rent payments. The lawyer who owns it, Marty says to the guy, look, instead of coming after you for your rent payments, I'll take over the bar. And the lawyer says, great.
And that's how he came to start the Foxhole on his own.
Across the street was a yellow cab garage, and Marty came to me and he says, Neil, what would you say if we put in a high-class nightclub in this property across the street? If you can come up with the money, then you can become my partner in the Foxhole and a partner here, 50-50. I said, okay. So that's when we built Tracks, the nightclub. From then on, the story just exploded.
Marty was all about creating a party.
Tracks was nondescript for the most part until you walked in. It was by far the best dance venue in the city.
It was the place everyone went to be themselves. It was just an amazing party, a beautiful place, wonderful people. It was always crowded. Tracks was the trendsetter in Denver at the time.
I think what Marty was able to accomplish culturally through Tracks is just a place that, celebrated you, where straight people could be comfortable, where gay people would be comfortable, people who didn't know what their orientation was and were discovering themselves. It was just a place where you could have fun and dance.
He took on challenges that he really never acknowledged to a lot of people. He and Neil had a hard time, obtaining financing because of what I would say at the time was a fearful opportunity.
We could make money while doing good things. Doing good things in the community was simply good business for the nightclub as well.
And I think he loved being part of not just a great business, but really a movement of inclusion. He always said the Foxhole and subsequently Tracks are gay bars for everyone. They're not gay men's bars. They're not gay white men's bars. These are gay bars for everyone.
It was impact. It defined the acceptance of the gay community in Denver.
Six years earlier, police across the country are raiding gay bars and throwing people out for being gay, putting them in cattle cars and taking them to jail just for being gay. In Denver, back to this closeted lawyer running a closeted bar, basically, if you were gay and you wanted to meet up with someone, you had to go sneak into a car at Cheeseman Park. You couldn't just go to a bar that welcomed you with open arms. And Marty really found that offensive. He really, really found that offensive.
We were always on board with whatever Marty wanted to do. I just figured everyone had a dad who had a gay bar.
Tracks would not have been as successful as it was if Marty hadn't had the unwavering support of his wife, Kay.
Kay was always willing to do anything that needed to be done. She was running around doing many things that involved taking care of Marty, but also most famously for the food business. We would try to get somebody to just have some food available, especially over at the Foxhole. And they would always mess it up. And it was just like, it was such an easy thing to do. And Kay was like, I'm doing it. And we made it Kay's Hot Meats. She even brought her mom down to the club.
We always had people who loved that we had 3 generations in the snack bar, because their own families had ostracized them. And here we are with a mom, a grandma, and a daughter.
You have that kind of family niche, and you have an owner that got his family that's participating, and having Kay come down and hang out with all of us and be a part of their world was also amazing.
We had something called Customer Appreciation that we did 3 times a year. We did it on the Monday of Memorial Day, the Monday of Labor Day, and usually the Monday surrounding July 4th. And what we did is have a big cookout for all the people that did not have a place to go on those holidays.
Marty would host Thanksgiving for all of his employees who weren't welcome at home for Thanksgiving. And in those days, Thanksgiving, the night before Thanksgiving and the night after Thanksgiving were 2 of the biggest nights of the year, because all these gay folks would come home where they were barely tolerated at home, and Trax was really their exhaust valve. Trax was a place where people could be themselves.
It was revolutionary. You know, he made a safe space for so many people at a time when there just wasn't one, and was completely okay with it at a time when just that wasn't the mindset.
You know, we know that about 40% of the homeless youth population identify as LGBTQ, and it's often because they're rejected by their families when they come out as an LGBTQ person.
First of all, going to a homeless shelter as a young gay person, if you think it's scary today, imagine what it was like in the early 1980s. So they had bunk beds at Trax, and Marty would allow employees who were runaways to stay at Trax, to live at Trax, as long as they needed to, so they had a safe place to stay.
Can't imagine how many people have been through this club, and it's changed their life. It gave them a place to be. So it was really a home for people for years. It was a second home. Some people it was their first home.
I did have a few friends that lived in Trax. It was always funny to see, they're coming from behind the DJ booth and that's their bed back there, but he allowed us to have actual beds. I mean, he bought these things so that people were comfortable here to live and enjoy and get back on their feet and get where they need to be.
I was a street kid, pretty much didn't have a place. I just came out and my family had pretty much rejected me. And so I moved to Denver with a backpack, and I heard that a new club was opening, a club that was had been here before. I had never really been to Denver, so I had never heard of it. They were looking for a manager, and they offered me the position. I remember Marty told him, this kid looks like he can do it. And I ended up managing it until 2013. And then I took everything I knew and the money and everything that I had made and everything that Marty had done for me, and I went and got my education, which I never did. I was a street kid, so the club is all I knew. He built me up to be able to have the confidence to go and apply and do that and do it sober and understand that I didn't have to be a club kid anymore. That, people would like me because I was smart. And he believed in me. And what he was teaching me, I was gonna be able to go and make a career of someday. It would take me a really long time, but I did it. And he came and saw me and he was so happy that I did it. My own family didn't come.
My mom and sister and Marty and I were on a vacation in Washington, D.C. And we went past this huge building, and it was in a crappy part of town, like don't get out of your car part of town, right? And Marty kept circling around the building, and he said, you know, this would make a fabulous tracks. And he said, I can see a big awning, and I can see limos pulling up. And 18 months later, there was an awning in front of that building, and there were limos pulling up.
And Marty saw that vision, and he did it in a big, bold way. He put it front and center. You know, he was a businessman, of course, but he also understood that he was creating an opportunity for a marginalized group of people to have an opportunity to have a better life. You didn't know if you were going to be able to get a job. That wasn't a time where you could go out on dates to restaurants or go to other clubs.
A lot of Congress people who were closet gays would go to tracks because they felt they didn't have to worry about coming out of the closet, so to speak. And there were many, many people like that, you know.
We were out in Chicago for a weekend together, and we're sitting there, and it's a all-you-can-eat fancy brunch, and the waiter comes over and introduces himself, and we're talking with him. Marty said, oh, we're from Washington, and and he has a club there. And the guy said, oh, I used to work on Capitol Hill as a page. And then Marty went on to explain to him how he owned Tracks DC. And about 5 minutes later, the young man came out with 2 bottles of champagne and gave them to us and said, this is on me. Without your Tracks Club in DC, I wouldn't be alive today. I think that story is probably multiplied by hundreds of times.
Marty and my father had big ambitions for Tracks, for the brand, for the gay community. They envisioned expanding beyond New York and Tampa. They were going to go to cities all over the country, eventually all over the world. They wanted to do gay retirement homes with the Tracks brand, gay hotels with the Tracks brand, gay cruises with the Tracks brand. They formed a publicly traded company just to launch all of this and raise some money, and then HIV hits.
When AIDS first cropped up about 18 months ago, almost all its victims were homosexual males.
It was hideous, of course. I mean, I would keep a photo of each one of those guys after they were gone. And at some point, the frames at my house were over 100. In the Reagan administration, they couldn't even say the word AIDS. Just to get information out, just to educate gay men about what was going on, we had to raise money on our own in the community to print flyers.
It was a really, really tragic time. And I know that for Marty, it was really important to do whatever he could to support the gay community. I would say most of the employees that I knew in DC have passed away.
At the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, no one knew what caused this. And one of the things that Marty and I both feared was that amyl nitrate, what we would call poppers, were somehow involved, because that was one thing that we knew, almost all the gay men that we knew used, and we thought that seemed to be a likely culprit. It turns out that that was in no way involved and had nothing to do with it. And Marty and I were selling, I don't know, 400 or 500 bottles a week. I think we would buy them for 90 cents and sell them for $6. You can do the math. And it was cash. It was good money.
Well, now here comes the decision process. Do you make a decision of possibly on the health side with no technical proof whatsoever and sacrifice a profit center?
And so we, on our own, just said, we're not selling these anymore. Okay, and we didn't. We actually threw out what we had.
We would hold many AIDS fundraisers and events for the AIDS research and the gay community. So that's again part of the generosity that Marty expressed, and I really give him credit for that.
He had a number of employees who unfortunately died of AIDS. And he would take care of their medical expenses. He'd make sure that their paychecks would go to their families, so they wouldn't be left with nothing.
Having someone like Marty to help spearhead the Denver community specifically and understanding what that was and how we can do it through education of the club, through bringing in Denver Health to help do checks. If somebody were to find out that they were HIV positive, there were people here to help them get through that. I think that it really helped show, again, that we're not just a nightclub, that we're an empire of giving and caring for other people.
Even though they had some tough years, Marty and my father owned the property. So it helps to, and Marty always taught me, it always helps when you're your own landlord, because if you miss a rent payment, he'll be forgiving. So Denver and DC were able to hang in there until the late 90s, and then lightning kind of strikes twice, and that's when Marty's gay nightclub story really becomes a real estate story, because when Coors Field comes to Denver and they decide of all the places in Denver, where can they put Coors Field, and they put it across the street from Trax, Marty received offers from developers in Denver and he just couldn't say no. And then when Major League Baseball decided to relocate the Montreal Expos to the nation's capital, where are we gonna put the stadium? Southeast Washington, where Trax is, and again, here come the developers, and he couldn't say no. So by the end of the millennia, Trax was done.
I knew my group of friends and club kids, we just didn't have a home without Trax. So to know that it was closing and not know that there was something to replace it was devastating. That's kind of what set me out to look. And he kind of said, all right, if you can find a place that is 20,000 square feet and it needs to be multiple floors and I don't, and all of these things. And so I literally sat down with a piece of paper and found this building, and I could tell from the moment that we walked in here that he saw the potential in this, and ended up not only buying the building but the block, and then kind of branching out from there.
We forget that Exto and Trax was one of the first establishments in the Rhino area that people went to as a destination.
Rhino it wasn't even Rhino at the time. It was just warehouses upon warehouses upon warehouses. Like there was nothing going on down here. And so Trax was kind of like the impetus for the growth in this neighborhood.
When I got here, and I think Trax kind of landed here at the same time, was really disregarded. It was an area that nobody really cared about. It was a lot of abandoned warehouses, and it was one of the most polluted zip codes in America. I think it takes a vision, and Marty definitely had a vision to be able to come into a neighborhood and uplift it.
I met Marty at a community meeting, and I didn't know who he was, and he was sitting in the back, and I thought he was just this curmudgeon neighbor. And then I got the opportunity to really understand who he was. And I just began to fall in love with Marty. But he has an incredible knowledge and social justice understanding of the neighborhood.
My favorite memory of Marty was in this event center, and Bill Clinton was coming. And we've got dresses on and suits and ties. And Marty walks in with sweatpants and a stretchy yellow t-shirt, his sandals and one sock, and he had his hands full of peanuts, and he was just eating peanuts, walking in to meet the president.
Wherever Trax is, things grow around it. Things become happy around it, are successful around it, and people of all walks of life, from coast to coast, know what Trax is and what it stands for.
Marty left a footprint, not just on Denver, not just on Colorado, but on LGBTQ people all across this country.
I think his soul is what we're going to miss the most, and he was a unicorn when it came to who he was as a person and what he meant to all of us.
Marty really was a pioneer. I mean, geographically in Denver, ahead of his time in terms of the serving the gay community. To think that we can now live in a state that has a governor that's gay, really generations of gay people have a debt of gratitude for everything that he gave to help make sure that we know that Colorado for all means us too.
In no small part, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to Marty Chernoff for creating a space that laid a foundation for a number of people to be stronger, more mature, more vibrant individuals, and therefore we have a stronger, more vibrant LGBTQ community today.
I'll remember him for, being a father figure and this great man to me and someone that didn't reject me.
I was just in Trax a couple weeks ago, and I got a chance to see his legacy. I got a chance to see men and women express themselves in a way that they can't in everyday society because of Marty's acceptance and his vision to create this place.
We had an unbelievably creative lifetime of friendship.